Hello, I am Jolie Long with the National Board for Certified Counselors. We welcome you to our webinar today. NBCC offers free live webinars on current and emerging topics of interest in the counseling profession. We value and welcome all practitioners, students, professors, and anyone working in the profession. Before we begin, I would like to share some meeting details. Closed captions are now enabled, and attendees can turn these on and off as desired. Interpreters can join the meeting via the phone number, ID, and passcode provided on this slide. A link to this PowerPoint presentation will be posted in the chat so you can access the links on this slide. To receive continuing education credit, you must complete the session evaluation, including an attendance attestation. The link to the evaluation will be posted in the chat at the conclusion of the webinar. We will also send you an email with a link to the evaluation following the webinar. We will only be providing continuing education credit for live attendance. This webinar will be recorded and made available on the Counseling Compact website for viewing purposes only. Due to the large number of attendees, the participants will remain in listen-only mode throughout the meeting. The presenter will be taking questions at the end of the session, so please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. Next. Before I introduce our presenter today, I would like to share that NBCC is currently conducting the Work Analysis Validation Survey for professional counselors. This voluntary survey asks counselors to share about their work and skills involved in the practice of counseling. Data from this survey will inform examinations, advocacy efforts, program design, and more. The survey will take approximately 30 minutes with an option to complete additional questions. You can earn 4.5 continuing education hours for free by completing the survey, reading provided supplemental articles, and taking a short assessment. The survey will be open until September 30th, 2025. We invite you to participate. Your help will strengthen the counseling profession. The link to the work analysis survey will be provided in the chat and in the follow-up email. Next. Today's webinar is titled The Counseling Compact, The First Steps. Today, we welcome Counseling Compact Commission Executive Director Greg Searls to talk about the Counseling Compact, how to apply for privileges, and ethical considerations for counselors. Next. I would now like to introduce our speaker, and his full bio is in the slides for your convenience. Greg Searls is the Executive Director of the Counseling Compact Commission and a licensed funeral service practitioner in the state of Wyoming. He got his start in the licensing world after he was appointed to the Wyoming Board of Funeral Service Practitioners in 2010. Director Searls has served as Wyoming's executive director for several licensing boards, including the Mental Health Professions Licensing Board. He served as the ex officio representative to the Counseling Compact Commission for AASEB until Wyoming joined the compact and was then named commissioner for his home state. I now welcome Director Searls to begin his presentation. Next.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. Special thank you to NBCC for having me here today. Thank you for all of you for being here in attendance today. Greatly appreciate your time. As Jolie said, we will take questions at the end. Feel free to type them into the Q&A at any time, and we will do our best to answer those as we get to them. I'm going to answer a lot of your questions as I go through this presentation, so you may want to hold off a little bit before you put those in there to see if I answer them through the presentation, because I'm going to describe the requirements of the compact and how to apply, tell you which states are a part of the compact, and also give you a little bit of some ethical considerations as part of that. I'm going to do that through a three-piece little presentation here. We're going to talk about the Compact Commission itself, privileges, and then the Q&A session. Before I begin, just a little bit of a disclaimer. I am, as Julie said, I am a funeral director by trade. I am not a counselor. I am not an attorney. I am not a CPA. I can't give legal advice. I can't give tax advice, anything like that. But I will talk about some of those things that you may then want to talk to your own attorney or CPA or tax advisor about as we go through this session. So hang on tight. We're going to give you a lot of information in the next 45 minutes and go from there. As you can see, we currently have 39 member jurisdictions, including 38 states and the District of Columbia. We have current legislation pending in 2 states, Michigan and Pennsylvania, waiting to see how those pan out as those legislative sessions run through later in the year, and they still have time to adopt the legislation in those states. The states that are clear, Oregon, Idaho, California, Alaska, Hawaii, New Mexico, Texas, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, all have chosen not to join the compact for one reason or another at this point and do not have legislation pending. Some have considered, or actually every state has considered legislation since the original adoption of the compact, but have chosen not to join for one reason or another on the legislative level. And understand that it takes legislative action in each of those states by the lawmakers to become a part of the compact. If you have questions about why one of those states is not joined, reach out to the state licensing board as well as the state professional association in those states. They'll be able to provide you with more information as well as let you know what efforts have been undertaken in those states to move the compact forward and if they're going to reconsider it in the future. So the counseling compact is a contract between the states that agreed to certain standards for counselors, and understand that the counseling compact is only for those licensed professional counselors in their states. It's not for social workers. Social workers have their own compact, and you can find more information about that at swcompact.org. Marriage and family therapists have chosen to pursue a reciprocity model, and addictions therapists have not provided any information other than the traditional methods of application through initial licensure and reciprocity that might be available to them. So only licensed professional counselors, some states refer to it as a licensed mental health clinician, but it's only for those and those licensed at that level, independent level, to assess, diagnose, and treat behavioral health issues as professional counselors in their states. And we'll provide a list of exactly which state licensure title qualifies for that as we begin releasing the information about each state as we go into the live process. But this model was created as a privilege to practice model to allow counselors to be able to practice across state lines without having to go through the burdensome process of applying through each individual state, which we know typically includes an application, transcripts, exam scores, supervision documents, and official verifications from other states to then apply, wait for the review of that license application, and then be able to practice. Now, the compact builds on our current reciprocity system. It doesn't replace anything out there. Even if you don't qualify for the compact, you still have the existing pathways that are out there to become licensed in another state. I understand that that may not be the easiest pathway for you, but those pathways still exist. The compact does not prevent you, if you don't qualify for the compact, it does not prevent you from working in multiple states. And the compact is granted limited authority in the legislation to pass rules and adopt rules as to how the compact works. Now, most of you probably are already part of a compact, not a licensure compact, is when it comes to occupational licensure, but you probably are already part of a compact, and that most common compact that everybody is aware of but doesn't realize it's compact is your driver's license. Your driver's license allows you to apply in one state, and then the other states will allow you to come drive in their states without having to pass their licensure exams. So it's that same type of model that the compact is using to allow counselors to practice in multiple states. As I said, the commission has certain authority that they're granted under the legislation that was passed by the 39 jurisdictions. They have the ability to establish bylaws, to impose fees to cover the operations and activities of the commission and staff. We are required to maintain fiscal records. We're required to meet and take actions consistent with the provisions of the compact. We have the power to promulgate rules within the authority of the compact. Now, we have that authority, but it is limited. We can't just establish rules because the states maintain their sovereignty under the compact. So whatever counseling is defined as in each of the member jurisdictions, the compact does not change that. We can't adopt a rule that says you must allow gender affirming care in your state to be a part of the compact. The compact just does not have that authority to be able to adopt a rule like that. And even if they did try to adopt a rule like that, it would be found that it's outside of their authority and not enforceable through the provisions of the compact. We're required to establish a budget and then also establish an elected executive committee, as well as many other things established in Section 9C of the Model Compact language, which you can find a copy of on our website at counselingcompact.gov. Through the compact, each state is granted the authority of one delegate per member jurisdiction. So each jurisdiction has that one person that represents them in the full license or full compact commission meetings and allows for their vote. It's not a method where, the more licensees you have, the more delegates you get. Each state has equal representation under the compact. The delegate that is assigned by the state licensing board or agency has to be either a licensed professional counselor, uh, staff administration, or a public member of the licensing board or agency to serve in the delegate role or temporary representative role that is also permitted through the commission language. The temporary representative would obviously serve in the absence of the delegate and has the voting power of the delegate. However, if the delegate serves on a committee, the temporary representative does not take the place of that delegate on a committee. The committees include the executive committee, which are 7 delegates elected from the pool of all of the delegates. So in the first meeting that happened back in 2022, there were 7 members elected. We've now had several elections and turned some of those people over as they've moved off of their board or into other roles. We also have 4 ex officio members that represent the major counseling organizations within the profession, including NBCC, AASCB, the American Association of State Counseling Boards, the American Counseling Association, ACA, and the American Mental Health Counseling Association, better known as AMCA. They do not have voting privileges on the committee. They serve purely in a role to advise and provide information to the executive committee. The executive committee then appoints delegates to serve on the other committees, including finance, rules, compliance, and elections committees. If we establish further committees, they will also be appointed by the executive committee to those. Temporary representatives may serve on those committees, but as I said, not in lieu of the delegate that is serving on those committees. All commission and committee meetings are open to the public, and you can find more information about those meetings, times, and links to the Zoom meetings at counselingcompact.gov. The full commission met last February 12th, 2025 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, as we are required to meet annually. The next meeting at this point is scheduled for February 25th, 2026 in Orlando, Florida, although there may be a hybrid or a virtual meeting before that February 25th, 2026 meeting. The executive committee meets the first Wednesday of every month for 90 minutes at 1 o'clock Eastern. Finance the second Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern for an hour. Rules for Thursday, noon Eastern for 90 minutes. And the compliance committee the first Monday of each month, unless it's a holiday, such as was this month where we moved it to the second Monday at noon for 1 hour. Once again, all those meetings are open to the public. They contain a piece that allows for public comment during each of those meetings. The commission is happy to hear your comments. If that item is on the agenda, it can be discussed. But if your comment doesn't refer to something on that current agenda, it may have to be moved to the next month before any discussion on that topic can be heard. So people ask often, what are the benefits of the counseling compact? Why did we do this? Well, there's benefits to both the public and to you as licensees. Obviously, it increases the access to counseling services for those across the country. We all know there's a mental health crisis in the United States. There aren't enough mental health professionals to serve the needs of those that need those services. It expands market opportunities for you as licensees. to reach outside your own area to be able to serve clients, or if they move, to be able to serve them and continue that client continuity as they move. It also is designed to support our military families, the military families that are often moved every 2 years with a new assignment, giving them the ability to participate in the compact, even if they're not living in a compact state, but are licensed in a compact state, so that they continue to have that continuity of care as well, because they don't make the choice as to which state they get to, which state they are assigned to. While the compact facilitates telehealth, it will also allow for in-person care. So if you live on a state border and have your live in that member state and are licensed in that state, you'll be able to obtain the privilege in that neighboring state if it's a member state as well. And then you could have an office in that neighboring state as well if you would so choose. It also allows for the credentials to be transportable between member states. I'll talk more about how that transition is done a little later in the presentation. It promotes cooperation among compact member states. We're going to share information through the database and website system, especially when it comes to disciplinary action, so that states are notified when a licensee has discipline against their license or encumbrance against their license, and that will affect their ability to participate in the compact, depending upon whether it is through their home state or a state where they have the privilege to practice. It also provides consumer protection across state lines. As I said, we'll exchange that information regarding discipline through the compact system with automatic notifications in the system, as well as if the privilege to practice is affected, through the verification portal that is public as part of the compact system. And I'll show that to you a little bit later as well. So let's talk about the real reason you're here. You all want to know about the privileges, how they work, and what it's going to take to apply for a privilege. First of all, understand that participating in the compact is 100% voluntary. It is not something you're required to do. As I said, it's another method to be able to apply and have the privilege to practice in another state. It may not be the best business model for you. That is something that you will have to look at for yourself and determine, because you've got a lot of considerations when it comes to participating in the compact. As you work in another state through the compact, you are working under their scope of practice. So you have to read the rules, regulations, laws, and policies of that state so that you know that you're in compliance. Because while it may be legal in your state where you're licensed, it may not be legal in the state where your client is at the time of services. And that's what you have to understand, is when your client moves or is in another state, even if just visiting, they're being regulated by different laws. You have to have that understanding, because especially when it comes to things like gender affirming care, reproductive therapy, things like that, all of those are viewed very differently between the states. So you want to ensure that you're practicing properly from state to state. That, as I said, because you can do it in your state doesn't mean when they're on vacation in another state that you can still continue that same line of therapy, because it may not be legal in that state. You also have to understand, what are documentation requirements for that new state. Do they have a different intake form or form, to explain what your services are, what information has to be included on that. So you need to understand those laws and regulations. What about an emergency plan for when that person is out of state or in another state? Do you know who to contact in a crisis situation for where they're at the time of services? If you're not asking where your client is at every session, especially if they're using a virtual background or you don't recognize the background where they're at is something that's normal for them, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you could be violating the law and practicing outside your scope of practice, and be subject to discipline. And you don't want discipline against your license. We all know you've worked hard to obtain licensure, and that is your ability to have an income in life. And so you want to be sure you're able to maintain that. You also need to understand the mandatory reporting laws from state to state. They vary highly from state to state, as well as what is the age of maturity or majority in that state. for what laws you need to understand. What is the scope of practice? And then some of the other things I want to talk about that I don't have great information on is what about billing? How does that work? Their insurance company going to allow for you to bill for when they're in another state? Now, if it's self-pay, that's obviously very easy to do. But when it comes to insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, all those things, you may have to panel in another state to be able to receive funding for those services. And you'll need to talk to the insurance companies, the Medicaid and Medicare offices, to ensure that you are still going to be reimbursed for those services that you are providing. Now, Medicare has come out and said that a privilege to practice will be deemed equivalent to a license in that state for purposes of Medicare, but Medicaid and insurance companies may not look at it the same way. So once again, please contact those agencies and ensure that you're going to be able to receive compensation before you provide those services. And the last thing that I'm going to advise that you consider is what about your liability insurance? Will it cover you for work while you're working in another state? My understanding from most liability insurance companies that I've talked to is yes, you are covered because it covers you specifically, not where you're at. But please reach out to your liability company and ensure that you are covered under your policy before providing services. So to be eligible for a privilege, first of all, you have to live in a member state and hold a license in that state, in that same state. So unfortunately, if you live in any of those states that I mentioned earlier that were clear on the map, you are not eligible for the compact at this time. If they adopt the compact language later, then yes, you would be able to apply. State licensure boards have to require a 60 semester or 90 quarter hour master's degree in counseling or equivalent graduate works. You have to have gone through postgraduate supervised experience, and you have to have passed one of the national exams. The three national exams that are recognized for the compact are the NCE, the NCMHCE, and CRCC examination. As long as you've passed one of those as part of your licensure process, you should be eligible for the compact as well. Each state must also require you to have undergone a federal criminal background check as part of the licensure process to be eligible. So if your employer did it, that's not the same thing as licensing agency doing it. It has to be through the licensing agency. And no, you can't share information from the employer background check or another agency that you might have done a background check as federal law forbids information of a background check from agency to agency. The last piece of this is you cannot have had any dispute against your license or privilege within the previous 2 years to practice or to be able to apply for a privilege to practice under the compact. Now, there's probably a lot of people on this call that have been licensed for a long time. Requirements were equivalent to this. Well, the good news is that the compact rule committee and then the full commission adopted what we refer to as a legacy licensing rule. So as long as you are licensed at that highest independent level of professional counselor when your state enacted the compact, you are eligible to participate in the compact through the legacy licensing experience rule. So where do you need the privilege to practice? When you're practicing under the compact, the only place you need the privilege is where your client is at the time of service. The compact does not look at where you as the clinician are at the time of services. So let's say you're in Wyoming. I'm going to use Wyoming a lot during this presentation being my home state. So you're a LPC in Wyoming, you have a client that's in Florida on vacation, you need the privilege to practice in Florida. Let's say you as the Wyoming licensee then go to California for your vacation while your client's still in Florida. As long as you have the privilege in Florida, you're able to practice with that client. That the compact doesn't look at the fact that you're in California, which is a non-member state, and that doesn't affect your ability to see that client because you have the privilege to practice in the jurisdiction where your client is at the time of services. So how will you obtain a privilege? Now that you've met the requirements, what's the process for being able to attain a privilege? Well, as I said, you have to have that LPC license that meets the requirements that we just talked about, that background check that we've talked about. 19 of our jurisdictions require a jurisprudence exam. of some kind. A jurisprudence exam is an examination that is specific to state laws and regulations for that state. So if the state requires a jurisprudence exam and you want a privilege to practice in, we'll say, Colorado and Arizona, both Colorado and Arizona will have their own separate jurisprudence exam that you have to complete. It's not one jurisprudence exam that covers all 19 states because I said it refers back to their individual laws and regulations. So it will vary from state to state as to what's included in that exam. You complete that examination process, and then you'll be able to go into the system, pay the state fee. State fees vary right now from $0 to $400, with the average being right around $100 for the privilege to practice. And you'll also pay an additional $30 administrative fee to the compact itself, as the compact, as I said earlier, has to have its own finances to be able to operate and maintain that database system as well as employees. So you'll pay that additional $30. And once you've completed that transaction, you'll receive the privilege to practice via email so that you'll have your privilege to practice number and be able to verify that. And as soon as you have that privilege to practice number, you'll be able to start practicing. So with this process, which I'll demonstrate to you here in just a couple of minutes, from the time you apply to the time you have the ability to practice in that remote state is going to be a matter of minutes. Now, I say home state, remote state. What's the difference? Home state is a state where you live, where you're licensed. That is your home state. A remote state is any state that you have the privilege to practice in under the compact. So let's take a look at that demonstration, and I'll show you exactly how you will apply for privileges. So when the system launches, which we don't have a specific date at this time as to when privileges and applications will open, we're still working on completing this database and website system and testing with the states to ensure that their data uploads properly into the system and that they provide us the required information as part of the compact. So more information will be posted to the website as we get closer to the launch date, as far as what the actual date for launch will be, as well as which states will be a part of that initial launch. We anticipate the initial launch will probably have around 5 states active in it. And then as other states meet the compliance requirements, we'll roll them out on an ongoing basis and get them into the system just as quickly as we can. So your first step will be to come to the screen and you'll register as a practitioner. By clicking that button, you're taken to a page where you get to request an account. Now understand, your home state is already going to have provided us your information to say you're eligible for the compact. So we'll have that information, and the information that you enter here for the first name, last 4 of your social security number, and date of birth, as well as your home state license, must all match what is in the system. If we don't have that information, you're going to get an error that you're not found, and you'll have to go back to your home state to work with them to find out why you're not in the system. Some common things we've already talked about is if your license is under James, but you go by Jim, or it's under Nicole and you go by Nikki, be sure you're entering exactly how it is on your license for both your first name and your last name. Your last 4 of your social security, your date of birth. You'll have to choose that you're a licensed professional counselor. This compact system was designed in conjunction with speech language pathology and audiology and occupational therapy assistant or occupational therapy. And what that allowed us to do was, because the compacts all had such similar requirements, we were able to split the cost of building this system from the ground up. That when the compacts were originally adopted, there was the thought that we would be able to use an existing system from one of the other compacts, such as physical therapy or nursing, to make this happen. And what we discovered very quickly was that that was not possible. And so the 3 compacts joined together to build this system from the ground up in that we will hopefully launch here soon in the fall of 2025. The email address that you enter, please make sure it's something that you check on a regular basis. This is where we'll communicate with you for anything that's compact related. This is the one piece of information that does not have to match what the state has on file. So if you use your work address for state communication, but want to use your personal email here for the compact, you can do that. That's where you'll receive all of your information. Once you've entered that information, It will be verified. You'll receive a temporary password in your email. Hence, again, why you want an email address that you have access to. And once you have that temporary password, you'll be able to and log in as a practitioner. The first time you do this, you'll use that temporary password. You'll be asked to change that temporary password to a password of your own choosing. And then once you've done that, we also use multi-factor authentication. Now, understand here in the test environment, multi-factor authentication is turned off just for the simplicity of it. But multi-factor authentication would use some kind of authenticator application on your phone, such as Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator, to receive a 6-digit code that you have to type in to then gain access to your account. Just another security measure that we put in place to ensure that only you are able to get into your account and make changes and purchase privileges. So for me, I have my information stored. I have a great password storage app on my that allows me. It's called One Password. Look into it if you're looking for something. It's a great system. So for me, and please remember, I am not a counselor. This is all test data. It is mock data. I'm not putting myself out there as a counselor. It's purely for the ability to purchase privileges and do these demonstrations. So in this case, in the system, I'm licensed in Ohio as my own license. My license expires on June 18th of 2026. I have no disciplinary action, which makes me compact eligible. And once again, Ohio provided all this information and determined that I was compact eligible. With that, side you've got this pull-out menu, and on the left-hand side you have account information. You cannot change your first and last name; those are locked by the information provided by your state. But you can update your email address. When you change your home state, and I'll talk more about how you do that later in the presentation, you are required to do that in the system here by choosing the other state that you would have an eligible license in, and you have to wait until that new home state information is uploaded to be able to do that. You can change your password, or also if you are military or a active duty military member or active duty military spouse, you have the ability to upload documentation. Some states are offering a military discount, but it also, with the military, allows you to set your home state as any state that you have a current active license in that is a member state. So we'll say you're in North Carolina currently, and you get a PCS to California. Even though you move to California, you'll be able to maintain North Carolina as your home state and continue to have the ability to have the privilege to practice. But in order to do that, you have to upload documentation that shows that you have the active duty military status. I uploaded a mock document here for mine to show that a PDF does upload into it, and I can edit this information, remove that document, change that document. The compact will audit these documents to ensure that you do have that proper ability to apply for those statuses on a regular basis. Once you're done with all that information, you can work on obtaining privilege. Either do the menu, or there was also a button in the upper right-hand corner of that home menu that allows you to purchase privileges. You'll be taken to a screen where you will see all of your personal information, once again provided by the state. You're going to attest that that information is yours, that you are a resident of the state listed on the page. By primary residence, we mean where you primarily live. We know there's a lot of people that out there that snowbird and move state to state for limited periods of time. So to figure out what is your primary state of residence, you would look at, where do you hold your driver's license? Which state do you use for tax purposes for filing as your primary state? All those things that would help determine truly what your home state is, and that you attest that the information is correct to receive information from the compact. You're then taken to the listing of states that you can purchase the privilege to practice. In this case, you'll see Ohio is grayed out because it's my home state. I don't need to purchase privilege in that. But if you remember back on that home page, I had already applied for and received privileges in Alabama and Florida. So I can't repurchase these. These will remain grayed out until it's time for renewal. And once your home state has updated your expiration date, then you would be able to repurchase the privilege in those states. So in this case, we're going to look at Arkansas. And as you can see, I purchase as many as I need in one transaction. Um, whether I need all of them or whether I just need, in this case, we're going to do two of them because there's a slight difference here that you'll see. First of all, if you apply for this privilege, it's going to show you, if you purchase it today, what the expiration date of that privilege would be. The expiration date is based upon the expiration of your home state license. So if your home state license is going to expire in the next month or so, unless you absolutely need that privilege in an emergency situation, I would suggest that you wait until you've renewed your home state license and that date has been set further out. Otherwise, when you hit that expiration date, you would then need to come back in and pay these fees. And each one of these are mock fees as well, with the exception of the administration fee. The state fees are all mock, as we just needed to put data in. As states report that information to us, we will post it to our website so that it is readily available to you so you can know exactly what those fees are before you come into the system. In this case, state fee for Arkansas is $100, the $30 administrative fee, subtotal. You have to check that you've read and affirmed to the scope of practice. You know that you have to work under that when you work in that state, um, and that if you violate anything, that you could be withheld from obtaining privileges for 2 years. Now, Nebraska has a jurisprudence exam requirement. So in this case, I have to attest that I've already completed that jurisprudence exam and could provide information if requested regarding that jurisprudence exam completion. And the states will audit that because that is a state requirement. The states will be the one to inquire for that documentation, not the compact. Once again, you have to click that you've read and understand that scope of practice. So depending upon whether they have the jurisprudence exam or not, you have one or two attestations on that page. You're then taken to further attestations. Our attorneys were heavily involved in this process, as you can see, to make sure that we've provided information and that you fully understand exactly what your application process is and what you are required to do under the compact. So this first one is that you are not under investigation or you are under investigation. This one does not affect your ability to purchase a privilege, but it provides information to the compact to know that in the future we should be looking for resolution from you as to whether that was upheld or whether it was dismissed by your state. In this case, I'll say I'm not under investigation. You're going to affirm that you are not under discipline in any state, whether it's a member state or non-member state, and you have no encumbrances. That you're attesting that all the information is true and affirmed. Because I uploaded the military documents for this, I have to attest that once again that is true and correct. This is like any other application. When you click these and say yes, that is, you're affirming those things to be true. And if it's found that you lied on those, just like any other application, your privilege could be revoked because of lying on an application. The next screen is the summary. You're going to see which states you applied for, what those individual state fees are, your total administration fee, and then there's one last checkbox down here that you have to complete or the check to that you understand all purchases are final, refunds will not be issued. So once again, if you purchase that privilege 3 days before your license expires and then have to reissue it, we're not refunding that first one because you made a mistake. Refunds are not issued, and that's in the rules of the compact. You're then taken to the payment information page. You enter your credit card, expiration date, first name, last name, just like you would complete purchase. By the time you do that, when you go back to your dashboard, your privileges will appear down here. And it shows once again the expiration date, when it started, when it expires, what your privilege number is. As you see here, it is LPC dash the state that it's issued to, followed by a number. And notice that the number is different in each state. So there won't be a 243 in Alabama and a 243 in Florida. They will always increase in number so that there's not the same number in Florida. You can then view specific details on privileges. to understand what the status is, and as the progress develops, you'll see how long it's been issued, if there's ever an encumbrance against it, or if you allowed it to lapse and chose not to renew it. That period would show in there, because if you then come back and purchase the privilege, you will maintain that same privilege number. You also have the ability to generate a verification document up here through the compact if an employer or licensing agency or insurance company might require that information, so that you have all that documentation available. When you're ready, you can log out down here on the left-hand side. Takes you back to your home dashboard, where you would then have to back in. So the process is really very simple. Shouldn't take you much time at all, as long as you've completed those required jurisprudence exams ahead of when you go to apply for the privilege to practice. So now that you've received the privileges, how do they work? Well, your privilege is going to expire the same date as your home state licenses. So if your home state license is valid for 2 years, your privileges will be valid for 2 years. If you live in one of the 7 states that you have an annual licensure renewal, your privileges will only be good for that year, and you'll have to pay those fees on that yearly or annual basis each time you go to renew. The state fee and the administrative fee will be charged each time you go to obtain that privilege. Once again, you'll want to renew that privilege after you've received your home state license renewal. Don't wait until the last minute to renew your home state license. I know people do, coming from working in the Wyoming office, but if you do that, then there's a good chance that your privilege will lapse and you won't be able to practice under that privilege until that information gets uploaded into the system. States are required only to upload information on a weekly basis. So depending upon when your license expires, how quickly you renew it, and when that time frame of that new upload occurs, there could be a week or two difference in that time frame. So like I said, please do not wait to renew your home state license. For privilege to practice, you do not have to worry about the continuing education requirements in that specific state. You only need to worry about your home state license continuing education requirements. So once again, if you live in Wyoming, you only need to complete Wyoming's continuing education requirements. You don't need to worry about what the continuing education requirements are for when I have the privilege to practice in Florida. So there's a benefit to you there as well when it comes to time and maintaining and tracking that, as well as with everything expiring on the same date. Now, we realize that can be a lot of money at the same time for that. But once again, that's a business model that you'll have to choose and plan for, knowing that they will all expire on the same date. So what happens when you change states? If you move from a compact state, so I'm in Wyoming, and I decide, you know what, I enjoyed that vacation in California so well, I'm going to move to California. As soon as I change my residency to California, I'm no longer eligible for the compact. I have to report that to the compact under the law. And as soon as I do that, my privileges would be deactivated, because I don't meet the requirements of the compact of living in a member state, and being licensed in that non-member state, even if I obtain the California license. If you move from compact state to compact state, so I'm moving from Wyoming to Colorado, that the mountains are more my style, and I want to go live in the middle of nowhere and use my Starlink satellite to provide telehealth across the country, I'm able to do that. And what would happen is, when I move to Colorado, before I move to Colorado, I ensure that I have that privilege to practice in the state of Colorado. Once I move to Colorado, I will notify Colorado that, hey, I'm now a resident of your state. I need to convert my privilege to practice to a home state license. Colorado will have a expedited application process that will allow you to convert the privilege to a home state license without the need of your exam scores, your transcripts, your supervision documents, or official verifications from other states. The things that they can require as part of that is the application itself, an additional fee, and a background check, as well as their jurisprudence exam. Those all can be required as part of that. So that should speed up your application process. Obviously, with waiting for a background check, there's a little bit of a delay there, but because you have the privilege to practice, if you wanted to start seeing clients in person, you would have the ability to do that as well, since you do have the privilege to practice in that state. Now, military permanent change of station, as I said, when they move from state to state, they can name one state for the entirety of the active duty status to be their home state. They do not have to change their home state with a compact every time they have BCS. They just have to update their military documents in their file. Disciplinary action. Well, we hope this never happens. We will. And so when it does happen, if it happens against your home state license, as soon as your home state reports that to the database system, which they're required to do, your privileges are automatically and instantly revoked. The system will notify the states where you have a privilege of that action against your license, and provide information, or the remote state can contact the home state for more information if they want. Now, if you receive a encumbrance against your privilege in a privileged state or remote state, when that action is taken, the privilege in that state is revoked. That is the only ability that they have for a privilege. They can't give you a conditional privilege or require you to do supervision, anything like that. The only thing they can do is revoke it. They can't suspend it. They can't give you a letter of warning, anything like that. The only thing they can do is revoke it. Once they revoke it, your home state is notified, and any other state where you hold a privilege is notified. They can then request that information from the remote state where the encumbrance happened and review that information and determine if it was actionable by that jurisdiction as well. If your home state would take action, then we go back to that home state, take it, enact an encumbrance. All your privileges are going to be revoked. But another privileged state could also choose to revoke just their privilege to practice. The example that I often use is if you're familiar with Colorado, recreational use of marijuana in Colorado is legal. So if Colorado was my home state and I had a privilege in Wyoming, and we'll say I also have privilege in South Dakota, and I'm found to be in possession in the state of Wyoming, that's reported to the state. The state chooses to revoke my privilege to practice in their state. That information is going to be sent to Colorado as well as South Dakota. South Dakota and Colorado both request that information from the state of Wyoming. Colorado may look at it and say, it's legal here. We really don't care that they were doing it there, so we're not going to take any action. South Dakota may look at it and go either way on it, depending upon their laws. But the only thing South Dakota would then be able to affect is the privilege to practice in South Dakota. You would still be able to maintain your Colorado license if Colorado chose not to encumber your license. You've got a privilege, now what? Well, once again, I'm going to remind you to practice under the laws, regulations, scope of practice, where your client is at the time of services. Those privileges expire based upon the expiration of your home state license. And when it comes time for renewal, get your home state license renewed early, and you only have to complete the requirements of continuing education for your home state. Here is my contact information. The email address, info@counselingcompact.gov, the website counselingcompact.gov, and then the Compact Connect website, which is the database system, where we will provide links to the applications when they open. But there's also information on there currently that shows you the progress of the build, where we're at in that, and the steps that have been taken to get to this point, and how close we are to being able to issue privileges under the compact. If you call the phone number that's on the website, or you email that info@counselingcompact.gov, I am the only full-time employee of the compact, and answer all of those phone calls and emails myself. We do have a part-time employee that assists me, but at this time they're not answering those phone calls or emails, though we anticipate in the future she will be assisting with that process. So frequently asked questions. I know I've covered these in the presentation, but I'll give them to you one more time before we get to your actual questions. Your license was issued before the current exam or our requirement were in place. Can I participate? Yes, you can. If you were licensed at that highest level by your state, your home state, when the compact was enacted, you will have the ability to practice under the legacy licensure exemption that's in place in the rules. You have a license in the state where you work, not the state where you live. um, can you use that license? So um, the state where you work is a member state, your home state is not. Can you use that license? No, you cannot, because once again, you have to um, live in and be licensed in that same state. Excuse me. In that case, both your home state and the um, state where you work are both member states. You still cannot use that license. The last one covers your home state isn't a compact member, but you have a license in a state that is a member. Can you use that license? No. So you can't um, live in Wyoming, or excuse me, you can't live in California and use a Wyoming license to participate in the compact. There's often questions about why, and part of that is a lot of licensees hold more than one license. So if we had one state that says you are eligible and another state that says you're not eligible, which state would we have to follow in that? So as they were drafting the compact, they made it clear that there's only one state that determines your eligibility, and that's the state you live in and are licensed in. So with that, we're ready for your questions, and I believe Julie's going to come back on and assist me with some questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Searls, for sharing your time and your knowledge, your expertise, and such wonderful information, and for the demonstration of the database as well. We're now going to move on to the question and answer period. We have a lot of questions that have come in. We've tried to pick some of the best ones for you to answer. We may not be able to get to all of those, of course, but we'll take as many as we can. So I'm just going to start throwing some out to you. The first one I think is really important to clear up is, can a provisional or associate counselor participate in the compact? We've had that one repeatedly.
The compact is not open to provisional or associate licensees for the counseling compact. Only those licensed at the independent level, at the highest level of practice, to practice without supervision, are able to participate in the compact.
Thank you. The next one that we have is an insurance question. And this person wonders what has been relayed by insurance companies about how the compact would impact billing processes and reimbursement rates and credentialing, given that basically every insurance company is different and can vary regionally as well. Have any major insurance companies relayed this type of information to you?
Of course, we have. We made the insurance industry aware of the compact and that it was coming to fruition on the, as I said, on the federal level a couple of years ago, so that they're working on those policies. But no insurance company, Medicaid nor Medicare, has come forward to us and said, this is what our policies are going to be. So you'll have to reach out to those insurance companies on an individual basis, unfortunately, to determine what you need to do to be able to bill across.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure as privileges are issued, as that process begins, more insurance companies are going to get those questions. So we may have more information down the line that we can share globally for everyone as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
The next question is there a maximum number of states that we can use the compact for?
The maximum would be the maximum numbers we have, which is 39 currently. So you can choose to have one state, you can have 39 states, and there's no limit to the number of privileges that are issued in that state either. If 10,000 counselors want a privilege to practice in Wyoming, we're going to give privileges if they're eligible through the compact to all 10,000 applicants.
Wonderful. All right. The next one is, how long does it take for your compact application to be approved or to see results of your application?
As I demonstrated a little bit ago, it is nearly instantaneously that as soon as your financial transaction is completed, the system will work to issue you a number and get that email out to you. And so as soon as they show in your dashboard, which will be about the same time that email goes out to you, your application process is completed. So while it should be just about instantaneously, If the system's overloaded at a certain time, maybe it's next business day, but it should definitely not be more than next business day unless there was something major going on with the data system.
Fantastic. Technology, it's wonderful not having to wait. So thank you for that. The next question is, what was the rationale behind doing this on a state-by-state privilege basis versus pact like SciPact, where you are either in or out of all the states? That seems like a cheaper and easier model to manage.
Sure. One of the reasons that this model was chosen over the others is the fact that with the counseling compact, only those that are using the compact are having to pay for the system and the usage of it. In the SciPact model, and also what I believe social workers have chosen, there will be a state fee assessed to each state on an annual basis to support the compact. So if you lived in a state but chose not to participate in the compact, part of your licensure dollars would still be going to the compact in that state. In this case, as I said, only those that want to participate in it are being asked to support it and provide financial assistance to make it happen.
Very good. Yes, we've had that question a lot too, so thank you very much for clearing that up. The next question is, this person is curious about how this applies to approved clinical supervision or supervision in general.
Sure, that's a great question. When it comes to supervision, each state is going to look at this a little bit differently because depending upon how state laws are written, a lot of the states say you have to be licensed in that state to provide supervision. And through the compact, you're being issued the privilege to practice. And while it has the same scope of practice, it doesn't mean you necessarily meet the requirements for supervision. They may have special courses that you need to take or additional continuing education means that you need, but also some states are looking at that you have the privilege, not a license. So under the letter of the law, you don't meet the requirements to be able to provide supervision in that state. So you'll need to contact each state where you want to provide supervision to see if having a privilege to practice would allow you to provide supervision, clinical supervision in that state.
Very good. Thank you. Here's another pretty common question that someone has written in, and this person wants comments about the states that allow psychology master's degrees to receive a counseling license, states such as Florida, for example. Will these individuals be able to endorse into other states to practice or be able to gain a privilege to practice? I think is what they're saying.
Sure. If the home state determines that they met the requirements for licensure at the highest independent level at the time the state was enacted the compact, then yes, they're going to approve and say they meet the requirements of the compact, either through the current licensing laws or that legacy licensing requirement. They are then able to attain a privilege in another state through the compact, and that remote state does not have the ability to look at their education or requirements to see if they truly met the letter of the law in that remote state through the compact. There's no review process from the remote state of your credentials.
Right. Okay. I think we have time for one more question, and unfortunately, then we're going to have to wrap it up. I think this is a really good question. What resources are available for counselors to understand all of the regulations from state to state? Should we be relying solely on the municipal guidelines that are on each state board's website?
And that's a great question. Each state's website typically has links to their rules and regulations. Absolutely, that's where you should be going to gain that information. We are working on putting together a page that will include the links for the jurisprudence exam to the state website, the fees, who to contact in that state that we will put on our website, which you see currently on the screen. We will have that information provided through the website. But yes, if you have questions about a specific state law or regulation, please go directly to that state licensing board to find that information. They're going to be the ones that have the most updated information. Do not rely on just a general site because rules and regulations, laws are changed. Laws can typically change on a yearly basis, but rules can change on a more frequent basis. So to be sure that you have the most updated information, review those states' websites.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we're going to have to end up there. NBCC would like to thank you, Director Searls, for your sharing your knowledge and all this wonderful information with our attendees today. We want to thank the participants for attending this webinar today. The link to the session evaluation is posted in the chat, and we will also email it to you following the webinar. To receive continuing education credit, you must complete the evaluation, including the attendance attestation, by September 18th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Certificates will be emailed by September 25th. We're only going to be able to provide credit for the live attendance of this webinar. We thank you very much for joining us today. We wish you all well, and we hope you found the session informative and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.